there can be only one. 16 fics under 1 fic leaves. What we're doing is pretty simple. Today we are choosing the single best fanfic to have ever come out of my little pony friendship is magic. No pressure. I will talk about how in a minute, but first, you might be wondering, who are these yahoos up on stage, and what makes them such experts about fanfiction? Well, we are the Royal Canterlot Library, current and former curators of the RCL. We are a group that has done weekly spotlights of high-quality stories and author interviews since 2013. You can find those on our website, royalcanterlotlibrary.net, or in your fanfiction.net newsfeed. I personally am Horizon. I am one of the group's founding members, but mostly an author. You might recognize me if you've gone to fanfiction in the last 2 weeks, where Time Enough for Love has been parked on top of the feature box. My best known story is probably an unfinished sequel to one of the competitors that I will be introducing today. I'm a frequent medalist in Write-Off Association competitions. I'm one of the admins of their fanfiction group. I'm also one of Bronycon's community guests this year, and I mostly wrote the script that they're using for the voice actor reading 2 hours from now. I've also got a published book of stories about Celestia and Luna in the Golden Oaks bookstore down in the dealer's den. My blog post about this was slightly premature. It is not yet sold out because another box was found after I made the post. So it's still available.
That's my bad, guys.
Okay. And what's going on?
I'm a fan of most everything. I'm here to add scientific legitimacy by dressing as Book Ape. I've written a number of different stories. Perhaps most notable would be the Oversaturation and the accompanying alternate universe, the Oversaturated World. Oversaturation may still be available in the bookstore, though highly unlikely.
It's not.
Okay then. But beyond that, I've also, in my own weekly blog, Friendship is Card Games, created more Magic the Gathering cards based on Pony than probably the entire rest of the fandom put together, and that is not an exaggeration. But beyond that, numerous slice of life, comedy, adventure, 3 entries in the Fake Hoot contest, I'm sorry. And yeah, I'm pretty much ubiquitous on the site. If you haven't read a story that I've commented on, let me know. I'd like to read it.
Hi, I'm RB-47.
Woo! RB-, I love you! You're relevant!
I'm probably best known for founding and running the Pony Fiction Vault for about 2 years, which when I shut it down, I was thrilled to have Horizon and company take over with the RCL. I loved having such a great successor, and I think they've done a better job than I ever did. I also started the Pony Fiction Archive a long time ago that I don't think most people even know exists, which is fine. Okay, thank you. And my current big project is as a publisher. I started Pony Feather Publishing earlier this year, late last year, to print fanfiction. Horizon's one of the authors, and we have a few of the other stories in contention today. And I'm looking forward to adding more to the roster for you guys to be able to buy them online later.
My name is Frozen Perfect, and I love you too, strange man in the hat. Aside from writing stories like The Princess's Captain and Epic Unicorn History of the Beards of Harmony, I have reviewed over 5,800 fanfics, and I am still doing that. Along with being here on the RCL, I am an AQD pre-reader. I do readings of stories on YouTube, and I also do editing and proofreading of fanfiction, so I do everything, everywhere.
Everything.
In my life. It's not great.
Hello, I am Pascal White. I've been the Questioned Daily pre-reader for 7 years. I was one of the founding curators of the Royal Canterlot Library. I am the only one on stage who is no longer one. And I have to say that was expressly so that I could be under consideration to have one of my stories accepted.
It worked.
Yes. So I've reviewed over 4,000 pieces of fan fiction. I've written 80 some. My best known one that I'm willing to talk about is probably The Art and Science of Letter Writing, but My favorite ones would have to be Ambergris on the serious side and Dinkin' Donuts on the fun side.
Dinkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Soj. I'm probably the only one in this panel that hasn't written anything of note. I'm not much of a writer, but I used to review fanfic a lot. And I think that's why those guys thought, oh hey, maybe we should bring that stranger into our midst. And they have been with the RCL for the last 3 years. And yeah, I love reading fanfiction, that's about it. And so I think everyone here likes reading fanfiction, so let's go on with the panel.
One point of contention on There Can Be Only One. Does the loser of each bracket have to delete their story?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Also, we'll be doing tiebreak. I know some of the authors are in the audience. If there is a tie, we're just going to have you guys fight to the death.
I am going to try and keep this moving here. We do have a lot of voting to get through today. But before we even start, I need to say something. Your favorite fic is not going to win. We suck and the process is unfair. There is a very simple reason why. There are 127,000 published My Little Pony fanfictions on fanfiction.net alone. We have 1 hour. We have to make some arbitrary and difficult decisions just to even create our shortlist. The highest rated story on fanfiction is not included. Yes, this is the blinking disclaimer at this point. It's a great story. We'd like to think there's more to being the best than just popularity. The most upvoted story on fanfiction is not included because Rob Capron 53 would kill us if we did.
We love you, Rob.
Yeah. There are tons of fantastic and popular stories that we couldn't include. If you don't see your favorite here, we are not saying it sucks. Emphatically not. We had to be unfair to hundreds of worthy stories in order to be able to do this at all. So let's keep in mind that this is really what this is about today is about celebrating 16 great stories, each of which is worthy of the title, and figuring out which of those is the best. It's all about bragging rights. It's all about good fun. So if you end up salty, please don't tear down the winner. What we'd love to have what we would love to see is to have you go home and post a blog praising the story which should have won, whether or not it's on our list. When we share great stories with each other, everybody wins. Can we agree on that? Woo! Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about how this will work. This is a link that you can sort of like get a sneak preview of what we're going to be doing in the next half hour here, but today's bracket is listed there along with our thoughts on what makes those stories great. We've also posted a list of awesome fics we couldn't quite squeeze into our short list. Hopefully we will have some time to talk about those as well as we go through this. We're going to be starting with a short list of 16 awesome hand-picked fanfics. We ran a nomination thread back in June and July that we advertised to all of our readers, and we ended up with 8 pages. Was it 8? 9? Lots of pages of suggested stories. 5 of today's contestants are going to be the top 5 vote getters from that thread. One of our 16 picks is a consensus pick that we all agreed on together, and the other 10 were individually chosen by curators. Each of us was asked to choose one favorite story from that nomination thread, regardless of the number of votes that it got, and then also given one slot which could be absolutely anything that we personally thought was the best. So what you're going to see today is a mixture of crowd favorites, personal favorites, and picks based on merit. And this is where you come in. We're going to start pitting these stories against each other head to head. We will be introducing them and asking for you to vote which you think is the better story. You don't have to vote if you haven't read them, but if you have an opinion, we want to know about it. This is how the process is going to work. If the audience vote is too close to call, then we will take it to our panel. If our panel of 5 people decides me ties, then I am our designated scapegoat. I will make a Chairman Kage type decision, and we will just go on from there. A few statistics for you. 6 of our 16 contenders are available down in the dealer's hall in the Bronycon bookstore booth, at least if they're still in stock. Our contenders are about half short stories and half novels. We didn't actually choose based on genre, but we ended up with 4 sad fics, 4 romances, 4 comedies, and 4 adventures/dramas, approximately. There's a crossover. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the sad fic bracket.
Big Fat Swell Hoodie.
So, go ahead and introduce our first contender here.
Of course. So, Background Pony, I think that many of you know this fic. It's quite infamous in the fandom, and it's a cruel fic. It's made by short skirts and explosions, and he casts Lila into hell. I don't think there is any situation in the world worse than what Lila goes through. And nothing that she does will ever be remembered by anyone, with one exception. The songs that she sings, that she plays for the ponies, it lingers in the heart. And I think that's so poetic, it's so beautiful. And the way that the story is written itself has this flooded writing, and it hurts to read. It's like achingly beautiful. That's the best description for Background Pony. And I personally hate the ending. I would say that to anyone that would ask. But the fact that it has been like 7 years or 6 years I have read this fic, and I cannot forget that ending. I think that speaks a lot about the power of the story. And honestly, that's the kind of fic that will never be forgotten.
All right, and its first round matchup is going to be against a fic from someone out in the audience there.
Jaxie.
We have, now I personally might be a little bit biased towards Gap Jaxie's Around the World in 81 Days because it was written for a crossover challenge that I posted a few years back. But it is great in a way that transcends that crossover in a way that transcends its source. It's a magnificent coming-of-age story for Spike, for one thing. It is a gorgeous, heartbreakingly gorgeous travelogue. But its greatest feat was taking My Little Pony and World War I and successfully mixing them. There are chapters that I still cannot read without turning into a sobbing wreck, and it feels like literature in a way that transcends most things that I've ever read. So, we have some voting. It's a tough matchup here, but let's go ahead and go to the audience. We talked about whether to do this via hands or via cheering, and I think in order to be good neighbors, let's not rather than producing bouts of noise at regular intervals, let's just see a show of hands. Who here thinks that Background Pony is the story that should advance to the next matchup?
Should or should not?
Should. This is voting for Background Pony. Okay, looks pretty good. Who here would like to see Around the World in 81 Days advance? That is close. Judges, what do you think? What are we seeing here?
Fight.
All right, are we going to have to take this? I think we're going to have to take this to our panel. That's a pretty even split. So let's go down the line, and if you have an opinion, judges, let's see what we do.
I love 81 Days Around the World, but I'm also suspect because I read how to read that story, so I'm abstaining.
All right.
I really should abstain because I'm a personal friend of Jaxie.
We're all, yeah.
That means all opinions. I'm actually currently reading Background Pony for the first time, so I'm going with 81 Days.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
All right.
I'm gonna give it to 81 Days as well.
To be perfectly honest, I actually haven't read 81 Days. And given that, I mean, present set a precedent, but I'm still going to abstain.
All right. So, very close matchup, but we're going to give this one on judging points, and 81 Days is going to move on to next round. And we've got two more fantastic stories, one of which is another one of our community picks. Take it away, President.
So, Keepers of Discord is from 2012, but it's the kind of story, going back to it to find something to say about it, that it really sticks with you because it's been a good 6 years since I read it, and I still remember that it is it's a masterwork of characterization. It's about a family of original characters who, generation after generation, are tasked with taking care of Discord's statue as he is in stone in the Camelot Gardens. And all the caretakers are fantastic, and it's told from Discord's point of view, and his voicing is absolutely spectacular.
All right, and that is going to be going up against a fic that Soj is going to introduce.
Yeah, so this is my personal pick, and I love this fic. The Descendant is probably my favorite writer in the fandom, And he has not been around for a pretty long time now, and he has a ton of classics like Tangled Up in Blues, A Cup of Joe, Our Gifts, and like, check him out in fanfiction. He's amazing. But I love Railway Ponies, Highball. It's like the apotheosis of everything he has ever written. It's like, it's the story about the changing of the times, this coming together between the old and the new, and about this group of ponies of a full OC cast that's really passionate about something that we don't think about too much, like trains. I don't think many people here think about trains in their daily lives. But it's so beautiful, it's so beautifully written. And at the end of the day, every time I get to that last scene where something happens, it's really predictable. I just start crying like crazy. It's anyway, it's amazing for me what he managed to do in that thing.
All right, let's go ahead and take this to voting. Who would like to see the Keepers of Discord advance to the next round?
Looks pretty
That
good.
is a lot of hands, all right. Who would like to see the Railway Ponies advance to the next round? All right, and it looks like we have Keepers of Discord by audience vote. If one of you guys wants to write down the margins that we're seeing here, we'll be able to post those later on our website.
I think I will.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and move on towards our adventure and drama bracket. And I think this is the fic a lot of you have been waiting for.
Oh, God.
I certainly have.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
This is kind of our number one seed here. It was our crowd favorite. I'm introducing it because I liked it so much that I wrote a spiritual sequel to it that I'm still going to be working on after the con and trying to get back up in place. Hard Reset created a genre. Before it, time loop stories were groundhog-based out-of-character dramas. Ekin turned that formula into a war story years before the movie Edge of Tomorrow, and the result is a frankly amazing mixture of action, drama, death, darkness, and hope. It spawned, as I said, an entire series, an unofficial sequel, and like just an entirely new way of looking at adventure stories. It was first place in our reader voting, and it is just darn fun to read. Its first matchup is going to be 9 Days Down, introduced by Pascal.
Yes, 9 Days Down by Joe Shogun is a fairly recent story, so I wouldn't be surprised if not that many people know it's there yet, but definitely give it a chance. This story is an exemplar of world building. It gives a very unique take on the nature of Tartarus, makes a huge world out of it that incorporates several disparate mythologies into a tale that just brims with interesting and convincingly dangerous characters. And most of those characters don't just appear quickly and then go away. They come back repeatedly, enough time that they get developed very well. It's also a wholesale reconstruction on the nature of what alicorns are, and you discover it alongside Twilight Sparkle, so you're in for the same roller coaster ride as she is. The story has plenty of world building and characterization to satiate enthusiasts.
I could say the same about
stories.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our matchup. If one of you wants to run that, I will go ahead and update our bracket in the background here.
Okay, guys, who likes Hard Reset? A few of you. Let's see it for 9 Days Down. It's a pretty good showing for a new fic, but it is going to go to Hard Reset by audience vote.
It's a shame. It's pretty big wasn't up against.
And we have a couple more fics in our adventure / drama bracket here, and we are going to start out with one that Reg is going to introduce here.
Horse Voice. Not Bad Horse. Horse Voice, where are you? Show us your best. Yeah, I know. Okay, so this was my personal pick. I've loved this story since the very beginning. I thought it was so good that it made me angry because I wanted to put it in the vault, but I had already featured another story by Horse Voice. And I ended up having to break my rule of one story per author because I had to have it in there. I think this is the best kind of mystery where you get all the pieces to the puzzle up front, and if you know what you're looking for, you figure it out. And so that makes it, to me, the best kind of horror story, because if you know what to look for, you get a slow build of this helpless dread because you can see what's coming and the characters can't. But if you don't know what to look for, you can still tell something's wrong, something's going on, and then at the end of it, there's this knife stab of realization that just hits you in the face. And I think it's incredible.
All right, and its first matchup is going to be against Story Pascoid is going to introduce.
Yes, this one was my pick from the popular fan voting. And it's hard to talk about Silver Standard without talking about everything else that Patchwork Poltergeist has written. And since it was in the popular vote, well, here we are, and that's the one I'm going to pick. But Patchwork Poltergeist is an absolute master of characterization. She takes characters who you love to hate and completely redeems them, not by making them better, but by making them sympathetic and believable as they are. And she does that with Silver Spoon in this story, throws her into a situation that she completely does not belong in and completely makes it work as well. Her other stories do the same things with Diamond Tiara and Spoiled Rich. She'll have you rooting for characters that you never thought you would, flaws and all.
All right, let's go ahead and take this to the audience. Once again, if one of you will take that over, I can go ahead and get a bracket in the background.
All right, so let's have a show of hands. Who wants to see writing on the wall advance to next? That's a fair number.
Yeah.
All right, and now show of hands for the Silver Standard. I think writing on the wall gets it.
That is close, but writing on the wall gets the edge. Just a second, I'll go ahead and sneak this in here. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and move on to the romance bracket. I see an author in the audience that is about to be very, very happy.
I don't know that
Almost everything, take it away.
The Enchanted Library is a fascinating work of frustration, and I mean that in the best way possible. It is a literary chrysanthemum that opens layer upon layer of secrets, inventive world building, monochromatic signature, heartfelt emotional and romantic development, and Rarity being unable to actually tell the truth even if her life depends on it. It isn't just a romance, it's a romance that shows its work, showing us every step of the relationship, every step backwards, and you feel for these characters, you know? And on top of that, it's an amazing alternate universe where, you know, Twilight was was a princess 1,000 years ago, and, you know, Discord played Mary Buggers, and, well, everything else would probably be a spoiler if you haven't read it, which you should.
Yes, you should.
All right. And the first matchup here is going to be against a fic that Reg here is going to introduce.
So for me, Yours Truly by Thankwall, if that's how you say it, is one of the best pieces of epistolary fiction I've ever read, where it's almost entirely told through letters characters are writing to one another. And I think it's one of the best I've ever read in ponyfic or elsewhere in fiction total. So we follow along over the course of years as the main six kind of drift apart from one another, but they keep in touch via letters, and we watch their relationships change as some of them reveal thoughts and feelings that they'd never expressed in person, but they could share in writing to one another. They felt comfortable doing that. And I kind of think that's something that a lot of us might identify with, since so much of this fandom is an online text-based communication thing, and I think that's cool. But so as we read these characters' letters alongside the characters they're addressed to, we get to witness the development of some of the purest, truest love, so strong that it keeps two of them together for 50 years, even though they decide very early on that they're not going to actually live together. And it's just beautiful, I think. It's a powerful celebration of love in general, and long-distance love in specific that really, I think, resonates with you even after you've read it.
All right, President, go ahead and take it away for our voting here.
All right, so show of hands for the Enchanted Library. That's a strong showing. All right, and now Yours Truly.
That's pretty close.
That looks like that's a kind of a dead heat to me. We may have to take this one to the judges.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I think I'm going with yours truly. Like Reggie said, it's just the perfect epistolary format in the movie, in the story, in fanfiction, and anything. It's I love that thing, honestly.
I'm going to have to take the odd step of voting for the Enchanted Library on the grounds that I don't want to say anything negative about stories. So I do have some reservations about stories here and there, and based on that, I would vote for the Enchanted Library.
I have not read The Enchanted Library yet, and I'm going to actually abstain because I don't want to say against it before I've had a chance.
I love you, Mono, but I'm voting for yours truly. I'm backing it.
Honestly, I am going to have to go with the Enchanted Library here. Like, yours really is incredibly touching, but there's just the depth of world building puts it over the edge for me.
And a split decision that sends it to Chairman Kage. And I am going to give this one to Monochromatic because she is a very strong, both of these bits are amazingly deserving. But I was blown away by TEL when I read it, and it's one of those cases, like Red was saying, where I regard we can't feature an author twice. So
Absolutely.
So
Right, the Enchanted Kingdom.
all right, let's continue on with the romance bracket here with one that's a little bit more of a different take. Fan of Most Everything, take it away.
Mendacity does something that it's my favorite thing you can do in fiction. You ask a seemingly innocuous question and you just follow it unto absurdity and see what happens. And in this case, that question is, okay, what if changelings were like the traditional folkloric fae? And interestingly enough, the very next step in that line of questions is, what if that's why Bonbon's voice keeps changing? This then goes for a full greatest story never told with regards to the royal wedding in terms of fake conspiracy, exploring the other side of things, and honestly, there's action, there's romance, there's mysticism, there's the Boogle Gnaws, which if you have read this story, you know is one of the most incredible things ever. And there is Aldrovandra, who is the best gadfly OC ever. And to give you some idea of how much research went into this story, there is a special edition that includes annotated footnotes on every step of the process involved. I said the Enchanted Library shows its work. This literally does.
All right, and its first round matchup is going to be a fan that Present Perfect will this guy's going with.
I've actually got a copy here. I believe it's Lost Time it exemplifies what book player herself actually said a couple of days ago at a panel, that a family is the sequel to a romance. And in this story, we get the family and the romance at the same time, as Rainbow Dash has been sucked through time, seemingly, into a world where she's been married to Applejack, and they have 3 kids, and she doesn't remember any of it. And it is absolutely heart-wrenching to watch her trying to figure out what she's supposed to do now with her life, assuming she can't get back to where she's supposed to be, as Applejack tries desperately to hold their family together. No one writes stories about family, no one writes stories about what goes on after the whirlwind romance, and no one does it better than Book Player. And this is her best.
She is at the con, is she here?
I'm watching her squirm.
Last Time was also one of the winners of our Correct the Record contest a couple of years back.
Yes.
Let's go ahead without further ado and take this to voting.
All right, can I see a show of hands for mendacity? Okay, pretty good. All righty. And who's in favor of Lost Time?
That's right. I think that's Lost Time.
Close vote, but we have a winner. All right. Congratulations to Book Player, and let's go ahead and move on to our final bracket, not the final four, that's something different, with our comedy stories. Reg, take it away.
Right. You guys know this one. Chrysalit's at the con. I don't know if he's in the room. Is he in here?
Are you in the room, Chrysalit?
Okay. So this is one of the books that we put up at the store, and it is just a blast. It's a classic, I think, in the truest sense of the word. It'll be 7 years old next month, and you can just keep coming back to it over and over again for its pitch-perfect humor and heart. He uses a Groundhog Day time loop to do a character exploration of the true villain of the show, Prince Blueblood. And he doesn't just redeem him, but he fleshes him out, and it's a great exploration of him and makes him someone you actually care about, which I don't think any of us thought we'd ever care about him after that season finale. He also does some fun stuff with the time loops, like making Pinkie Pie act differently in every iteration of the loop, which really screws up Blue Blood's plans. And then, so much like the show itself, I think it does a great deal of looking at serious issues with like Blue Blood's arrogance and laziness and Luna's isolation without getting maudlin or too over the top, and it's still a fun story, even though it addresses some real things.
All right, and its first round matchup is going to be against a story from an audience.
There he is.
Stand
Hello
up.
from Spain.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Take it away.
Okay, this is admittedly a little self-indulgent since it won a contest I organized. And it was available in the bookstore as part of the Essential Aragon. But this is a perfect example of his style. It's a bunch of absurdities and running gags and bits that shouldn't be nearly as funny as they are, and minotaurs threatening to punch things. And then it suddenly all coalesces into this impossible, brilliant, insightful Voltron of meta-narrative insight. Basically, this is like if Plato's Republic was written entirely in the form of a string of fart jokes. So, yeah, it's fine.
All right, we have some very tough matchups on the comedy bracket, but let's take this one to the audience.
Who likes the best night ever? Quite a few of you. Okay. How about evil is easy, governing is harder? That is, I think, a dead heat.
That looks like a split decision to me. We're gonna have to take this one to the panel. All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I need to go with Best Night Ever. It's shoot one of my, like I said, 7 years after reading it. It's so striking and so amazing.
And I'm afraid I will have to abstain. I have not read either one.
You have some great fixed in front of you.
I'm pretty sure I've not read Best Night Ever, so I'm going to abstain.
I'm very disappointed in my fellow panelists.
Shame.
I love them both. I published them both, but I do have to give the edge to Best Night Ever. I'm sorry.
And I realize my vote is moot at this point, but I still can't have such difficulty decide. I am literally going to roll the die.
Wow.
Okay, Best Night Ever.
Oh man, the dice hate you.
Two fantastic picks, a heartbreaking match, but we have London Dancing on.
Yeah, you're
We're
still
gonna go
solid.
ahead to our final two of our bracket of 16. I need to start this off with an apology to Skywriter. Skywriter, are you in the room? Okay.
Oh, good.
He fled.
That's for the best.
He has written many breathtaking epic stories, Contraptionology, The Cadence of Cloud Sales Cycle. He does not think Princess Celestia Hates Tea deserves to stand with him, but I will die on the hill of this being a story to be proud of. It is iconic, it's subversive, it relentlessly escalates tiny little absurdity into a worldwide crisis, and then it stops and punches you in the feels with a powerful statement about the nature of leadership. It was the RCL's first feature ever, and no story has ever outscored it in our voting process. and it is hysterical. It's also got a tough matchup, however.
This is a hard one to talk about because, like, imagine for a moment if Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams decided to start writing fanfic together. They will be publishing under the name Ghost of Heraclitus, and they will be writing Whom the Princesses Would Destroy. I mean, it is unfair that someone can write as well as this guy. It's honestly impressive. And it's like the perfect escalation of absurdity that still makes sense in itself, with a cast of amazing OCs, and at every single turn you're laughing your ass off, and then you're starting to think about the realities of the world and everything that lives around you, and it's amazing. You have Dotted Line, that's maybe the best I've seen in the fandom. I will probably die on that hill. And he's a good threat, he works in Kent a lot, and he has to battle cosmic horrors like interdimensional monsters, an infection of gooseberry jam in the castle basement, I think. And also petitions from nobles that keep asking him about the most absurd things. And all he wants is to have a cup of tea, god damn it. There was this beautiful scene where he finally gets tea, and it's emotional that that guy is getting tea. It's impossible to describe. And yeah, and honestly, I will never write it good. I don't think anyone here will. I don't think that's an offense. He's like probably the golden standard of writing in the fandom, I would say. And yeah, I love this fic, and it's available on. It was available. It's probably over now, like everything else.
All right, let's go ahead and send this to voting.
Princess Celestia hates tea. I see the folks in the back of the room are getting in on the voting too.
Thank you, soundboard.
Okay, it's a big showing.
All right.
Whom the Princesses Would Destroy.
That's
I think that's
HT, yeah. Skyrider advances, all right.
Or Skyrider. If he sees this, congratulations.
So we are running a little bit behind schedule, so there was some plans for potential color commentary as we go through round 2 here, but what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and burn through these and get our final 4. So let's go ahead and go bottom to top here, since we just went ahead and voted on our comedy fix. We have a matchup of The Best Night Ever versus Princess Celestia Hates Tea. Take a couple of seconds to think about that. And let's go ahead and see a show of hands for The Best Night Ever. All right, thank you. And show of hands for Princess Celestia Hates Tea.
Could you guys be more decisive, please?
I think this is another one that we're going to have to go ahead and throw to our panel of experts.
I'm sorry, Skywriter, but Princess Celestia hates tea. It's still really, really good.
We're still down in the brackets where I said I hadn't read them, so.
Yeah, I haven't read the one, so I'm abstaining.
All right.
I mean, this is actually physically difficult for me. I love both of these.
Did you want to die?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna do my best to spare Skyrider, and I'll keep voting for Best Night Ever.
All right.
But maybe you're gonna ruin that.
I will not go to the RNG on this one. This is a difficult decision, but in terms of sheer depth of improbable character development, I have to give it to Best Night Ever.
All right, and on a judge's split decision, Best Night Ever advances to the semifinals. And let's go ahead and move back up to the romance bracket. We have The Enchanted Library versus Lost Time. Whoever wins, we all win. Absolutely. All right. Without further ado, let's get ahead and get some voting going.
Let's see a show of hands for The Enchanted Library. That's a lot of hands.
All right.
Okay. And how about Lost Time? I think we gotta give it to Mono.
Yeah.
Enchanted Library by audience decision.
All right, and we'll go ahead and keep on moving back up the brackets. We have the adventure drama bracket. Hard Reset versus the Writing on the Wall. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Please make this decision so I don't have to.
Okay, can we see hands for Hard Reset? Lots of hands. Ooh. Okay, Writing on the Wall. Oh, you sir, the biker convention is next door.
All right, Hard Reset, that was both good stories, that was fairly decisive, and the Juggernaut continues its role. Okay, and finally we have Around the World in 81 Days versus the Keepers of Discord. A new classic versus a classic.
Mighty classic.
All right, so let's get this, New Coke versus Pepsi Crystal matchup. That was a horrible analogy, and I should be ashamed of it.
We're voting on good.
I will wear the horizon of shame for the remainder of this vote.
Changelings have no taste buds.
Okay, so we do, however, want to get a vote started. Around the World in 81 Days. Who wants to see that one advance into our semifinals? All right, and how about the Keepers of Discord?
It's keepers.
That is a respectable showing, but we definitely have some keepers. Can somebody please update the bracket for me so that I can keep the horizon of shame on my head right there? And then click on yes. Oh, thank goodness, I can put horizon down. Hooray! All right, and we have reached our final four. There are going to be some tough matchups here. Let's go ahead and start off first with just one quick round. If everyone can go down the line and give a shout out to a single fic we weren't able to include. There are going to be more of these in our the online link that I gave, which I will put back up at the end of the panel as well. But we'll go ahead and get some shout outs to great fics in as well.
If I had to pick, it would be Through the Well of Paren by Ether Echoes. Basically, Labyrinth, but with ponies and immanentizing the Eschaton.
I don't know if she's in here, but I want to shout out to Anon Pencil for the months she spent working on her, I can't even really call it a story, it was more of an experience, Broken Bindings, where she delivered this multimedia experience that she could only ever do online, and it completely sucks you in. My only criticism is that it's impossible for me to publish in a physical book because it has to be online.
I am going to go ahead and shout out to Fahrenheit's Requiem for a Dream. The premise is simple. What if Moondancer had beaten Twilight to the punch, discovering Princess Luna? The premise is simple, the mystery isn't. It's a heartbreaking story from a fantastic author.
I'm going to shout out, I don't know if he's here, Groaning Gray Agony's River Dream at Sunset. This is the perfect human question story for people with English degrees. He did a fantastic job with the old-timey writing style and this narrator who goes on a magical journey with talking horses. What more do you need?
The one I will shout out to is a very old one that may predate a lot of the fans in the room. It is Order from Chaos by Twilight Snarkle. And try not to groan when I tell you this is a Sonic crossover. It is a good one.
It is the Sonic crossover.
It is a complete exemplar of how to do a human pulled into Equestria and is gradually turning into a pony. It does a very convincing job of that, where so many fics just have the human, okay, I'm a pony. I know exactly what to do now.
And I'm going to shout out Asperon for the time being by Sharp Spark. I think it's also available downstairs.
Yes, I believe there's still a few of those at the store.
Yeah, and it's slowly, I still think it's my favorite ship fic in the fandom, and it's so funny, and it's so clever, and the sci-fi elements, it's amazing. Go read it, please.
All right, we have an interesting and very tough matchup of classics here between the Keepers of Discord and Hard Reset. And I think we all have our own personal guesses as to how this might go. But rather than doing predictions, let's talk about anyone have any brief commentary on what some of the qualities of the fics are that brought them here. Let's do our sports commentator thing. So,
Probably.
We are the best sports commentators ever. All right. Okay, or we can just go to voting. So let's go to voting. All right. Okay. We have the Keepers of Discord. Who would like to see that advance to our final two? All right. Respectable, respectable. Hard reset.
So hard reset.
Yeah.
No one's
gonna be able to vote at the end when it's
Yeah.
and then I'm not gonna vote.
And joining it in the final four, we have The Enchanted Library versus The Best Night Ever, which are both romances and sort of drama versus a comedy. We have two very different stories here. What do you guys think? I mean, just in the abstract, if we have a drama versus a comedy, what do you expect out of this matchup?
People love comedy.
Speaking of Mike.
I'm just amused how Rarity is involved in both.
I guess we love Rarity.
That's because she's the best.
Yeah.
Yep. Debatable or debatable? Debatable. I think he said debatable.
Yeah. As has previously been established, we are the best color commentators ever, so we're going to go ahead and send this to a vote. So, The Enchanted Library, who would like to see that advance to the finals? Yeah! We have a juggernaut here, all right. The Best Night Ever. That is still a lot of hands, but I think The Enchanted Library has it up. I would just like to say that when no hard reset advanced to the semifinals, I knew this was going to be our last matchup. All right, but before we do this, we can go ahead and we'll do sort of a consolation match for third place, because what would a matchup be without a bronze medal that we can still go ahead and give out to somebody. Keepers of Discord versus The Best Night Ever. We'll go ahead and build up a little bit of anticipation with one more round of shout-outs, and I'll get straight to the voting from there.
Probably another one I have to give. It's technically two stories, but they go hand in hand. The Crown of Night and The Education of Clover the Clever by Daedalus Eagle. These are two pieces that capture Star Swirl as just the wizard who causes slightly fewer problems than he solves, but to a degree far beyond what the show could ever manage.
I'm going to give a shout out to one that I don't know how much people have heard of it. Non-Sanity wrote a story called Words Failed Her that I loved.
Woo! Yeah.
Awesome! Okay, we've got some fans. I love it because it feels very much like a show episode, and it's about Twilight trying to solve a magical plague, but she can't research it because you're infected with the plague by reading. And I love that challenge for her. And I also think that it's a super sweet backstory because he started writing pony fiction because his 8-year-old daughter wanted him to read something to her. I think that's sweet.
My shout out is for the fic that I was most surprised not to see in our voting thread, and that is going to be a story by Kits by the name of Who We Are. It was one of the earliest Changeling stories, and perhaps the most quintessentially pony of them all, in the sense that it is a story that makes a really profound, solid point about the main six using Changelings as a vehicle.
I saved the best for next. The story that's still on top of my top 15 stories in the fandom, In the Place the Wild Horses Sleep by Lucky Dreams. Can you hear my voice? Like, I can't even say the title without getting emotional. This is just the best story, and I feel like it's what we should be producing as a fandom. I can't talk, I'm
I will give a shout out to a fairly recent story that I'm not sure has completed yet. It is A Bug on a Stick by Orbiting Kettle.
It is not even done yet, I'm editing it.
Okay, yes. So it's a fun take on Philly, Celestia, and Luna, which how many stories are there out there that show a precocious young Twilight or something like that? But it does a very interesting job of it, but also takes a very thoughtful but very funny look at what Chrysalis was like when she was young. This is the absolute right way to do literary comedy. Funny, but with rich story and characterization behind it.
And I'm going to give a shout out to Fallout Equestria. I think like
There it is.
And honestly, I can knock your head, my ass off about how many flaws those stories have. But when they're firing at all cylinders, when they're at their best, there is nothing that can stop them. There is a really good reason for why so many people love them, and why if you go down to the convention, to the dealer's hall, you'll see so many printings of all kinds of Fallout Equestria side stories.
That was one of many amazing stories which missed our final bracket by a hair. As I said, we had to be very unfair throughout this process. Okay, and we have the fight for third place. Keepers of Discord versus the best night ever. Let's go ahead and see some hands for Keepers of Discord. Respectable showing. All right, best night ever.
Looks like it's best night ever to me.
That is close, but it is the best night in third place. And we have the final matchup, and we have about 10 minutes left in the panel. So let's go ahead and, while I'm doing this, one last round of shout-outs. And we had about twice as many prepared, so there's still going to be plenty on our website, but very, very briefly, just a sentence or two.
I had exactly 3, so I'm pleased we're only doing 3.
All right.
Oh, and real quick, I will also say that we eliminated any stories by other panel members as possibly being shout-outs so that we wouldn't seem to be self-serving.
Yeah. We're very humble.
Yes.
I'm humbler than you.
No.
In any case, my final shout out will be to Alarm Clock by Metaphor. Basically, this is a story. Meta writes my style better than I do because it is time-space weirdness with Best Pony, aka Derpy Hooves, aka Ditsy Doo in this case. And it is ridiculous and fun.
I'm going to give a shout out to one that I just ran across recently by Alpha Cat called Brothers and Sisters. It's a really unique take on bat ponies where they're not like a fourth tribe in addition to Pegasi unicorns and earth ponies. They're just the nocturnal version of Pegasi. And it expands this little conceit into a really great approach to world building that also stays canon compliant. You could very easily see this happening in the background of the show.
You did that just for President Perfect, didn't you?
No, what does that have to do with President Perfect?
Get hacked.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay.
My shout out is going to be to a little story by Colden Gardes called Lost Cities. It has got haunting ambience. I think it is the fandom's most successful literary experiment, and I believe it has spawned, if you divide by the number of words, it has spawned more homages than even Fallout Equestria.
I'm going to talk about a slightly newer story, a Equestria Girl story. It's It Turns Out They're Windmills by Jay Karp. I'm just going to read what I have written here. Have you ever struggled with sexuality, intrusive thoughts, or literally just anything related to being alive? The story is for you.
My next shout out is Shoots and Roots by Machiavellian. Is he here? He's at the con, but I guess
Hey,
he's
he's back there.
He's back there. We got Machiavellian. This is a very wonderful and touching tale about how shared tragedy can bring two very, very different characters together. But even that is just the background story about one person's method of healing from tragedy.
And my final shout out is going to be to It Is a Dangerous Business Going Out Your Door. Another one of those old-time things from the fandom, and it's like, if you like Tolkien, if you ever thought that the show has not enough Tolkien influence in its world building, you should go read that. And it's the grand adventure between, I forgot for now, honestly. It has been a long time since I read it, but it's really amazing, and it has a really good sequel as well that needs more attention.
All right, and we have our final matchup, Hard Reset versus the Enchanted Library. So I'm not going to build up suspense or anything by doing this in reverse order. That would be cruel. So let's talk about how I would vote first. But if it does somehow manage to come down to me as a tiebreaker, I'm sorry, Mono, but Hard Reset inspired me to write a sequel that is definitely going to be my pick. Let's go to our panelists and see what happens with our judges, and then we'll take it to the audience for the actual vote.
That's mean. You're making us go first?
I'm making you go first. We have to give our opinions here.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, it's a really difficult decision. I do not envy any of you. But if I had to pick, it would probably end up being Hard Reset. I'm so sorry, Mono, but it's just an incredible story. Like, it effectively inspired a major motion picture. No one will admit it, but we all know it's true.
I really don't like this. I love these both. I love them both very much, and I'm gonna have to embarrass Monochromatic and vote for her in Enchanted Library.
Embarrassingly, I have not read either of these stories. Until today that Hard Reset is only 36,000 words. I'm gonna have to read that like sooner than later.
You can read it this afternoon.
I probably could. I have heard nothing but good news.
We'll wait.
Both of them, so.
Read it before. Get back to us. Yeah, read it now.
Well, I am going to have to fall onto personal bias, which I know is the very first time in this entire process. Absolutely. But I am a sucker for atmosphere and stories, so I have to give it to Mono, Enchanted Library.
Oh.
The story's all about atmosphere.
And if the vote was to me, it would be Hard Reset. Honestly, I love a good time travel story. The Enchanted Library is amazing as well, but Hard Reset is like you just said. You watch a Hollywood movie and think, okay, they didn't think the plot as much as the Sponific guy. And that's an accomplishment.
I would just like to say, all y'all better make a decision, because otherwise this is my fault.
It's your fault anyways.
Okay, so we have our final vote, Hard Reset versus the Enchanted Library. Let's see some hands up and make some noise. Hard Reset, who wants it to win? Okay, Enchanted Library, hands up, make some noise.
I think by hands and by...
I think that's Enchanted Library by... But please go read every single one of these because they're all representative Congratulations to Monochromatic, congratulations to every author we have mentioned and a huge number of authors that we were not able to. Check our website, we've got more shout outs. Thank you so much for all coming and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Let people know who the guys go to.